Hello and welcome to X Basic course. In this section, we will learn about time variables. This section mainly includes the following knowledge points. First, we will talk about what time variables are used for. Next, we will talk about the usage scenarios of time variable. Finally, we will introduce some basic usages of time variable with a case. First of all, we will introduce the widget of our time variable. For the date object in our JavaScript, the time variable saves the data of a time object and can reference the data of the year, day, etc. to obtain the time and output them in various formats. In HeCode, we can assign values to time variables. The assignment methods include our timestamp of 10 minutes and seconds on mm/dd/yy and the complete operation of 10 minutes and seconds on mm/dd/yy. Here we can briefly introduce it to you. So our timestamp refers to the number of seconds we have passed since January 1, 1970. Next, we will talk about the time variable. Its usage scenario. The time variable is usually used to save various times we need to record and can be transformed into the time structure you want. For example, you can use our time variable to obtain the time, minutes and seconds of the current time, the current day of the week, the number of days of a year and a month, etc. Then let's open our editor and learn how to use time variables. First, open our editor. We switch to the absolute positioning application here, then input the time variable here in the application name, and then click Create, so we complete the creation of an absolute positioning application. The reason why we create absolute positioning application is to make it convenient for us to make a simple feature later. Since we make a simple feature, then UI is not very important, so we choose a simpler absolute positioning application to make our UI. First, we form a good habit. We add a page under the front end, and then we add our time variable under the page. Where is the time variable? When we select our page, we can drag down to see that the last icon in the yellow variable, like a clock rotating, is our time variable. When we select the page and click our time variable, we can add the time variable under our page. Then we select our time variable. Let's look at its property first. Its property has only one content, which is its value. What is its default value? Is the current time. In this case, we add a button here and put it here. Then what is the function of this button called printing? Through the previous study, we know any variable it uses in action is what? It is to print its current variable, so when the button is clicked, we will trigger the action of such a time variable. What action is to print its current value? Let's preview it. Similarly, here we choose to check, and then switch to a control, and we can see that it will tell us now is the value of time variable 1, and then what is such a string of numbers. This string of numbers is the timestamp corresponding to the time variable. From what we have just learned, we already know that it is a description we have passed from January 1, 1970 to now. This is a concept of our timestamp. Then we can see that he also printed our time below. Let's click Print again to see if the timestamp here is a certain time away from the timestamp above, which proves that you can see that it will go back forever. Therefore, different timestamps can correspond to an effect of different dates. Then we can see that one of its times is also moving forward, so for our time variable, when we don't pay any initial value for it, it defaults to the current time, and if you trigger it at any time, it is the current time. So if I want him to save a fixed time, what should we do? We can choose to click the value of the time variable here, and it will let us choose a month, day, and a time it conforms to. For example, by default, if we click a moment here now, it will put the time of our current corresponding month and day here, and then we will print again. We can see that when I print, and when we print now, it will always maintain the time of our assignment at that time. I print again, it can be noted that the value of its time variable has not changed. Here, if you want to modify a date, you can also modify it. We can click here to modify its date, and its time can also be modified. Here corresponds to a 24-hour schedule. For example, if you want to adjust its time to 8 o'clock, you can also adjust it in this way. It's 8 o'clock. Then when we are at the top level, we can see that it copies a new moment into it. Then when we preview, we can click our print to print such a moment, so the assignment of property in the time variable is very simple. So next, we will learn a series of common actions of time variable. The old method is used to learn the action. First, we add a button. This button is defined as an assignment operation. Similarly, we trigger it through event. When it is clicked, we perform an assignment operation on our time variable C. There are 3 assignment modes in assignment. Let's explain them one by one. The first assignment is the assignment timestamp, and the unit is in milliseconds. Let's see our time variable here. Because we fixed a value to it, here, he printed the value of that time, not our corresponding timestamp. Let's take a look. Similarly, we directly copy and print. We can see that it corresponds to a value like 15 hours 30 minutes and 40 seconds. Similarly, you see, because I previously negative the value of such a timestamp, it will fixedly save such a value in our time variable. Here we need to explain to you that time has 2 units, one is millisecond, and the other is our second. So the difference lies in whether it has the following 3 digits. If you don't have such 3 digits, you can supplement it in a variety of ways. Such 3 digits become a millisecond timestamp. Similarly, if its own assignment is in seconds, if you're here, you'll find a way to give these 3 people. We won't introduce it further here. Of course, in addition to copying here as time, there are 2 simpler copying methods. Here, we first show you a method to copy the time, minutes and seconds of month, day and year. For example, let's enter a year here. For example, we are 2021, and then we enter a September month here. We choose September 15th as its date. Let's give a time of 20:30:0 seconds here. You see, we only need to enter the 10 minutes and seconds of the month, year and day, and we can complete an assignment. In the same way, let's take a look at the preview. In the same way, we directly click on an assignment, and we can see that it corresponds to a time like September 15th, 2021, and 20 hours and 30 minutes. Therefore, such a replication is relatively simple. Of course, in addition to this kind of replication, what is another replication mode? It's our assignment date and 10 minutes and seconds. You can notice a format here. What's the format here first? It's caused by quotation marks. What does quotation marks mean? The assignment here is carried out through a string method, and it is our standard time format. What is standard? The time format is year, month and day, and the following time is also 10 : month and : quotation marks, so we should also copy through such a standard time format. Since we want to copy the standard time, we must first put a quotation mark here, and then we copy the fund, for example, a 15:09 in 2021. What is this? It's September 15th, 2021, right? For their following time, we will retest through the standard method. For example, it is now 9 hours 5 minutes and 21 seconds. You can see that the following is also an assignment of such a standard time. Of course, let's look at it through a reading. We click an assignment, and we can see that it becomes 9 hours 5 minutes and 21 seconds on September 15th, 2021. Is it the same as our assignment mode? Of course, the assignment here is string, so it can also be copied through string splicing. Then finally, there is an operation to empty the time variable. Let's also take a look here. After we clear such a time variable, we will print its current value. Of course, by default, we give it an initial value, such as a time at the moment. Then we will carry out a preview. First, let's print. You see, since we select the time variable at the moment, it defaults to the current time. At that time, we click the time at the moment, and then we have an empty operation. You can see, since I empty it, does it recover a beat? So if I empty a time variable value, then it will be changed to the current value by default. So if we use an empty operation here, the time variable will be equal to our current time. Then we will learn a basic action of time variable. Next, we will learn how to refer to the value in the time variable. We will save the assignment button here. Similarly, we will add a text widget below, that is, we will assign such a text through event value, so when it is clicked, it becomes an empty. We don't want it. We directly assign an operation to our text, and then what is the assigned value? It's our text variable, right? Therefore, we need to select our time variable through a formula editor on our side. We can see that the value appears in the first content of the time variable, the current value, the previous day, and a day, and so on. This is a point that our time variable is very easy to use. Let me first demonstrate a value assignment of the current value for you. For example, now I want to refer to the time variable. Its current value can be seen. In the current value, there are the numbers of month, day, hour, minute and second, day of week and day of week, as well as the corresponding 10 minutes and seconds of month, day, hour, minute and second, as well as a millisecond of Unix, a day of Unix and a day of this month corresponding to its current date, and so on. So here I will show you the simplest one. For example, here I will directly copy a month, day, hour, minute, which is equal to the current value. We will clear a moment here, and then we will preview it. We will click an assignment. Does it print out the month, day, and 10 minutes of such a moment? Similarly, when we click the assignment again, we can see that it prints out our current year, month, day, 10 minutes, and seconds. Therefore, when we use time variables, we mostly choose what kind of content is the current value of the point. Let's give another example here. For example, a content here is its current value. If I want to quote a time variable such as distance, what should we do for a day in a week? Similarly, I copy this later, I post it like this, and then we put it below. What is this? This is next week. Similarly, I can click an assignment here to see if the current time is September 22nd, and then next week will it become September 29th? Therefore, this assignment method is very, very simple. We can get all the year, month, day, corresponding time and corresponding month through our time variable. It's the same size, so it's very, very simple here. I'm simply demonstrating two for you here, and then we start making one of our application. For example, here, I just want a year of it. I want to print it here. What should I do? For example, this is a year in which we display the current value. Similarly, I do it through assignment. Here, we perform an assignment operation on a text like us. What is the assignment? The assignment is equal to what time has changed. Do we want to change the current value? Year, right? So we will choose the current year worth the year. Here we will give a preview. Through the assignment, we can see whether the year is 2021 or not. So I will not give too much demonstration for you here. Therefore, for all the contents in such a moment, we get the corresponding content in the drop-down menu of a certain value. Of course, if you want to choose a gap with this time variable, you choose it in the drop-down menu of the time variable, for example, the next few years, the next n years, or the number of days, and the number of days gathered with this time variable, you choose it in the first drop-down menu. Of course, if you want to select the current value, you are directly here to select a content of the current value, which is a basis for us to complete the overall application of the time variable. Through the explanation just now, we have a basic understanding of the time variable, so now we will directly complete our lesson to complete an application. The application of this class includes two features. The first feature is to calculate the number of days between the two dates. How do we do this? Of course, there are many ways to calculate the number of days between two dates. There is also such a demo in our demo. Here I demonstrate a completely different method from the demo center to facilitate everyone to master it. So let's make its basic UI first. For example, what is its start date here, and select it as a start date here. Similarly, let's copy it, and then let's enlarge such a text box below, and then make a centering effect on it. That's what we do. Select the value of the start date. For example, here is a value such as September 16, 2021. Then, we copy and paste the two texts. Let's pull it down. What's this? That's our end date, right? So let's change it here. Here is an end date, which is the start date and end date. Then we can use a button to calculate it. For example, here is a function of our calculation. Next, we add a text below to show the number of days it has. Then here, we change the name to the difference day. Here we can write it casually. For example, here is the difference day if we want to select such a calculation. When we click on such a start date and end date, do we want to call one of our calendar selectors to help us make a selection? So here, we choose our page, we choose our selectors in the extension widget, and then we have a date selection here for a version of the mobile phone. We can click it, and we can see that here we can make a selection of its date, and then here it happens to have two functions such as start and end date, so here we can directly use one of our date selectors to complete the production of such a feature. So since we want to wake up such a date selector, how do we wake up? Right? When I click on these two texts, I can change them. Of course, how do we fill in the next 10 minutes and seconds? Since it is already the start date, we don't write 00-00-00 directly here, so he can fill in a 0:0:0 second by default. Is that okay? So we can make a copy of our end date for the same event, and the following is our end date for another associated parameter. So whether we start the end date with the same assignment and enter a variable of one of our dates, and then when he clicks the calculation, we will what are you doing? When he clicks calculate, do we want to copy one of our texts? What's copied here? Is it necessary to calculate the number of days between the two? What are we going to do with the difference in the number of days? Can we use one of our end dates? Think about the current value. I want to calculate the number of days between two dates. Is there any good method? There are many ways to calculate, but here I directly tell you the most standard algorithm. I use the current timestamp of my end date to subtract a timestamp of the current value of our start date. How much do we divide the difference between these two dates? Let's calculate. Here, we can follow you to calculate how many seconds we have per minute. Is it 60 seconds? So if we want to convert it into milliseconds, is it our 60,000 milliseconds? Then we multiply it by 60 for an hour, and then we multiply it by 24. Is this the number of milliseconds we experience in a day? Then we divide such a number of milliseconds, so we divide such a difference by our number of milliseconds. Here, we need to use a difference in our English input method to remove it to our millisecond divided by a millisecond in this way. Shall we round it or round it? If it is rounding, should we round up or down? You can think about it. If I have experienced 0.9 days, are these 2 days a day? Didn't it take a day, so we're going up and down? Are we going to count the functions we have learned in the previous one? It's men's flaw, so here it is mess.flow, and then expand it to see if we have calculated the number of days. Here we have a preview to see if we have calculated it first to see if the default value is 0. Then we change an end date, such as the ending date. The date of the bundle came to our August 26th, and then it started at about 0606. Let's calculate it. He said that there was a difference of 66 days in the middle. It's a little hard to see. We didn't make it a little worse. For example, the end date here is August 26th, and the start date here is August 24th. Click to determine the difference between the 2 days and whether it is 2 days. Is it very simple to calculate our start date and end date, and then we will supplement its details. For example, the difference between the dates is 2 days. However, to write such a word, do we want to splice a string? Here we put English quotation marks, and then click the plus sign. Here we enter the convergence difference between Chinese dates, and then add a plus sign, and our English quotation marks and days. Is this a result of a complete copy? Okay, let's take another look. In the same way, we should make a copy of its initial value first. Here we change the end date, and then click OK. Then, there is a difference of 2 days between the dates. In this way, we can calculate the number of days between the start date and the end date. Are we finished? In the same way, we will do our next feature, and the next feature will we know a date, and then I want to tell him how many days I want to get together, and then he tells me the end date. Then we can reuse part of a series of URLs here, so we can directly copy and paste a copy here. Therefore, this is called a date difference, and then the following is called our estimated date, and then we put the date difference in the second one. Let's go. Let's continue to complete our estimated date. Do we only need one date? So let's leave a value of a date here, and let it be displayed in the middle. There's no need for the end date here. Then, let's change it and pull an input box, and we'll just make one the date is pushed back by a function, so here we will enter the number of days. Since it is the number of days, we will change it to an integer. When we click the calculation, there is no difference of days. Here is a new date, for example, if it is 2 days difference, it is 09-18 in 2021 a number of days, and then also to our side, we still use one of our date variables to receive, so here we just keep the next date variable, which is called a date. Similarly, when I click such a selector, we only copy one variable, so we keep its start time here. Let's change it in the mobile version of the date selector here. Instead of the start time and end date, we choose a single time. Then when I click calculate, I will assign the new value to the following value, and then here we will preview one of the effects. Then, in the same way, we first copy an initial one here. For example, on June 21st, here is the paper on June 21st. Then, we calculate the paper 2 days away. Then, we can see whether it came out on June 23rd. Just now we came here with a paper 5 days short. Did we come out on June 26th? So these are some common techniques in our date variables. In fact, what is the core content? That is, we should learn to click on the date variable. What is this? It means that when I want to find such a difference, I make a choice here. If I want to select the current value, I want to select the current value in the first point. And then in the second point, there are many kinds besides his date, such as its current Unix time, and its corresponding time, minute, 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 xing, etc., which can be produced through such a feature. You can also go to the demo center to have a look. In the original version, we also made a function of calculating time and date query. How does he do it? Because this method is totally different from the one I show now. In addition, we also uploaded some small demos of calendars in our demo center, and those released MS are a series of calendars that are calculated by ourselves through our time variables. Therefore, through the study of this lesson, we can know that there are many advantages in storing all our time through our time variables, because we can easily get the current time variable, or the value of some difference between the current time variable and the time variable by referencing such a time variable, and then we can directly reference such a time variable. The variable corresponds to a series of information such as a date, days, timestamp, etc., so in our he code, whenever you want to involve our time calculation, you will use a content of our time variable. The above is all the content of this section. Thank you for watching.